So this is a disclaimer. I'm gonna spend the next like 20 minutes mispronouncing the name of the author that I made a 20-minute video about. Yeah, that's a whoops on my part. Uh, anyway, into the video. I hope you enjoy. Junji Ito's Frankenstein is a bad adaptation made by a great artist. It was shocking when I first read it, and I do not at all mean that as a compliment. Hello everyone, I'm AceDoesStuff, and I am a big Junji Ito fan. For those unaware, Junji Ito is a manga artist famous for his horror short stories and occasional longer form works, most famously of which Uzumaki, which is where this image comes from. Now, I've been reading his work for a few years now, and I can't deny the impact he's had on my views of horror. I remember going on YouTube late at night to watch fan-made dubs of his short story collections. Myself and many others regard Ito as truly a staple of the art form. I mean, to give context, this guy was supposed to work on PT. PT. So much of his work is distressing in a way no one else really gets at, and in a very thoughtful manner as well. I hold his work in very high regard, and many others seem to as well, judging from the amount of video essays about this guy's work. This admiration of his work led me to read his 1994 adaptation of Frankenstein, a book which I had recently read for school. Now, I'm going to talk a lot of shit about this adaptation. That's kind of like what this video is about. But by no means is it an awful manga on its own. And if you haven't read Frankenstein the novel, I'm sure you'll get a great deal out of it. My complaints are purely based upon its rather tone-deaf deviations from the source material, but I still love Junji Ito and I believe in fairness. So I suppose I should cover the good first. Like all of Junji Ito's work, the artwork is just beautiful. This is one of his older works, but even then, the artwork is superb, and it's used to great effect in the earlier parts of this adaptation. For instance, at the beginning of the book, Victor looks just absolutely sickly. And this is only one of many instances of Ito being willing to paint Victor in a poor light visually. This sadly does not carry into the writing of this adaptation, but it leads to some amazing visuals, like this excellent panel, and this excellent, almost Death Note-like switch in how he's drawn, showing the shift in his mindset. Excellent panels really make up a great portion of this adaptation, like this one. I love this panel because it shows one of the best parts of Ito's horror, which is the thoughtfulness in his layouts. Many will herald Ito as the, quote, master of the page turn, and this not only exemplifies that title, but I think it elevates it as well. The reason he is known as the master of the page turn is because he uses the popular manga and comic technique of placing a surprising detail after a page turn, thus raising anxiety as the reader has to physically reveal the horror they know lies on the next page. This is used to great effect in his most famous works, such as Enigma Fault. Speaking from experience here, that final page turn is the most memorable part. The page turn is again used in this manga to reveal a full page panel of the creature looming over the young William. If you'll allow me, I'd like to break this down. So, manga is read right to left, unlike Western comics. And like Western comics, it's read top to bottom. So, a full page panel in which the creature's horrifying face is placed at the top right is very clearly planned. The eyes start at the top right and scan down, physically tracing the looming figure of Ito's creature design. I truly feel this is the only adaptation to get across the visceral horror of the creature's body. He takes up the entire height of the frame, and as you reach his legs, your eyes begin to pan left, and you see William. He looks like he is the size of a house cat compared to the creature, and he is the very last thing you see in the panel. The implication is very clear, to say the least. In truth, Junji Ito's Frankenstein doesn't start off as a bad adaptation. In fact, it starts out a really good one. If you were to hand me the first 2/3 of this adaptation, the entire video would be singing its praises. And it's not even just that it goes against the original that gives me issue. For instance, a change I really do like is that the creation of the creature is visceralized so much more than the original, and it goes a great length in showing the depravity of Victor in his pursuits. In fact, this adaptation, Victor is given Justine's head for the female creature, which is a really cool and disturbing change from the original. It's elevated by the fact that Victor still calls her Justine, despite, by his own admission, she does not have the mind of Justine at all. And something the manga handles sort of well that many adaptations don't, is that it focuses on Victor. Frankenstein is about Frankenstein. A shocking sentiment, I know, but if you'll allow me, I'd like to propose that it's an oft-forgotten sentiment. The modern view of Frankenstein by people who haven't read it is that it's about the creature. I think this is the reason why many still refer to the creature as Frankenstein, because we hear about the creature, and the name Frankenstein is on the cover, so the assumption is that Frankenstein is the creature. However, unlike us, the novel is not focused on the creature. It's focused on Victor. Within the original novel, the creature does not appear until chapter 5. The novel is fixated on Victor because he is the vessel through which the story communicates its moral. He is ultimately the modern Prometheus that Mary Shelley was attempting to warn against. Because of this, his failures are the focus of the novel. From chapter 1, he is depicted as a morally devious character in the fact that he views his sister Elizabeth as an item rather than a person. This is a detail Junji Ito omits. The story of Frankenstein is a plot guided by Victor's mistakes, from the creature's creation to his own selfish paranoia. This can be seen most clearly in how he treats the creature. Time after time, Victor chooses the wrong thing and leads the creature down his path of murder. From the moment the creature awoke, Victor ran out on him, leading him to wander aimlessly through the woods. This act is present in both, but I'd like to call attention to how it is drawn in Ito's adaptation. In the original novel, there is a level of horror to how he's described, but he's still described as passive. He's described as standing over the bed and reaching out. Ito changes this slightly, showing what looks like a rather animated motion of the creature nearly grabbing out to him. I think this is an early indication of how the original would be morphed going forward. In the original, by the time Victor comes back into contact with the creature has grown, and he tells Victor his request for companionship, and rather than fulfilling his wish, Victor destroys the female creature out of disgust and cowardice. The ultimate message that a reader comes out with is that Victor is to blame for the creature, as he has shaped him in his cruelty. Another stellar example of Victor dooming himself is Elizabeth's death at the end of the novel. After being warned by the creature that he would return on Victor's wedding day after Victor destroyed his female creation, Victor is paranoid, pacing the halls searching every corner for any sign of the creature. In doing so, he leaves Elizabeth alone, and while she is alone, she is killed because Victor was too focused on his own safety, rather than hers. By the end of the novel, the natural response is resentment towards Victor, as he proclaims his creation as evil, despite his evils being caused by him. That response of blaming Victor is not one you would get reading Junji Ito's Frankenstein. The biggest problem with his adaptation, by far, is that all onus is taken off of Victor and placed onto the creature or the world at large. For instance, in Ito's adaptation, Elizabeth is again killed. However, in this case, it is not caused by a chain of Victor's mistakes, but rather because the creature just got there first. What can you do? It's not even just this case. For instance, the female creature Victor is asked to make. In this adaptation, Victor does it with the help of Henry Clerval for some reason. And rather than destroy it, Victor brings it to completion and even gets it alive. So then, what's the problem? Well, she instantly attacks him and the creature, causing the creature to think that this was a planned attack on his life, which it wasn't. This scene exemplifies to me the problem of taking the onus off of Victor and placing it onto the creature of the circumstances. The issue with this scene begins with Henry. He walks in on Victor while he is creating the female creature and offers his assistance. This is a vast departure from the original, in which he dies by the creature's hand and never even knows that Victor was involved, thus adding a cruelty to his death that Ito is aware of, as it's present in Justine's death in his adaptation. Henry's death was really impactful in the original, as it came after Victor had already destroyed the female creature, and it was the first sign of real consequences for Victor's cowardice. You see, Victor is arrested for Clerval's death, and there's an implication in the scene that he deserved it, because his mistakes got his childhood friend killed. The next issue is the fact that the female creature is never destroyed. In the original, Victor is this misogynist asshole. Like, as per mentioned, he viewed his sister as an object, and the destruction of the female creature is a great look into that misogyny, because it shows this gynophobia in his descriptions of the female creatures and his fears of them reproducing and creating a race of devils, in his words. In Ito's adaptation, that misogynist nature is papered over, and the interesting moral dilemma Victor thinks he's in is replaced by an alive Henry Clerval, assuring him that he should create the female creature. The last part of this scene is ultimately the reasoning behind this video, because it throws away the moral of the original. The female creature is awakened, and there are just mere seconds before she attacks Victor. She has not been influenced in the slightest. Victor treats her with care for the seconds in which she is awake, but he is still attacked. One could say she is naturally evil. I really hate this. Look back at the original and how it's supposed to be the story of how one man's mistakes led to everyone he loved being murdered through the fact that he led his creation to a path of murder. But no, this one is just naturally evil. You see how this proves him right, don't you? The novel is all about proving him wrong. The creature sits him down and tells him, "You caused this." We see the life he went through with zero guidance, and we see how he was naturally kind until the cruelty of humanity, especially Victor, shaped him into a monster. The creature was never naturally evil, he was made evil by Victor and the harsh world Victor threw him into. Victor whines and moans about the devilish creature, but Ito decides to prove him right by making a naturally evil creature attack him just seconds after its creation. I had a lot of questions after I finished reading Ito's adaptation, but the big one was why? Why was the novel changed in such a way to paint Victor in a positive light when the novel is so focused on reflecting Victor negatively? This question haunted me for a while. I looked up interviews of Junji Ito, I read reviews, I thought maybe I was the problem. Did I just not understand Frankenstein? It got so bad I asked my dad, who by the way hasn't read the book in 20 years, what he thought the book was about. I simply didn't get how such a renowned artist could make such a large departure from the source material, and no one has seemed to mention it. Do this few people care about the moral of the original? I then reconsidered. Maybe I understood Frankenstein, but misunderstood Junji Ito's Frankenstein. So I reread it in the middle of writing the script, and wouldn't you know it, there was nothing more to get. The female creature was still fundamentally evil, and I still didn't get it. I started to wonder why I cared so much. So what if one of Junji Ito's early works happens to be a poor adaptation of Frankenstein? There are so many different bad adaptations of Frankenstein. Why did I think this one would be different? The answer, I had to admit, was that I set myself up for disappointment. This video isn't meant to shit on Junji Ito or even this adaptation. As I said, I love Junji Ito, and even this adaptation isn't that bad when you view it as its own work. The truth is, I did not judge it as a manga, but as an adaptation. I wish I'd have read it as a manga more. I might have fallen in love with more panels. I don't like Junji Ito's Frankenstein, and I likely never will. It's an awful adaptation of Frankenstein that goes against everything the original stood for. But it's not a bad manga. I think there's a lesson to be learned here. I let a bad adaptation drive me to reconsider my thoughts on a novel I had loved. That is when it clicked for me. This is what people mean when they say something ruined their childhood. They let something bad drive them to reassess their enjoyment of the original. And I had done the same. I saw the beautiful faithfulness of the beginning of the adaptation and expected it to be just like the original ending, in the same way people see trailers for new Star Wars movies and expect them to be just like the originals. In my research, I saw a lot of reviews from people who have never read Frankenstein, but loved Junji Ito's adaptation. And for as much as I hope those individuals go on to read the, in my opinion, much better thematically original, I'm also glad they enjoy Ito's work. And that, I think, is the crux of it. They can read the original. I think we in the modern day have gotten too comfortable saying that an adaptation of a childhood classic ruined their childhood, but you can always experience the original. A couple years back, id Software unveiled a mobile game that was supposed to be a follow-up to the classic Commander Keen. The next month, Game Informer magazine got a letter about it, and the response from the Game Informer writer was much like my own. They simply stated that perhaps this new adaptation will rope in fans who will go on to play the much better originals. So, is Junji Ito's adaptation good? No. But from what I've heard, it's a good manga. I think we, myself certainly included, have to stop obsessing over the differences from the original and needlessly criticizing how they differ, and begin to consider art pieces outside of their existence as adaptations. Who knows? Maybe they'll enjoy the original the same way you did. I'm AceDoesStuff, and I ruined Junji Ito's Frankenstein for myself. Thank you for your time. Ah, that was great. Yeah, I bet you enjoyed. I bet you loved that. You loved it so much that you want to like and subscribe and share with your friends. Yeah. Ah, in all seriousness, thank you for watching. This was my first real attempt at making a video essay, and I want to do more. So if you enjoyed, subscribe because there are more coming. As I said, thank you for your time, and I'll catch you in the next one.